What if I told you that a single stretch of water, barely wider than a few hundred miles, could change the price of your groceries, delay your new iPhone, and shake up the global economy? What if the chaos in a narrow sea between Africa and the Middle East was making everything, from fuel to furniture, more expensive? And what if this wasn't just about shipping lanes, but about how fragile our globalized world has really become? Because that's exactly what's happening in the Red Sea, one of the most important trade arteries on Earth, where a regional conflict has spiraled into a global shipping crisis. Welcome to Nexus-Feed. Today we're unpacking why the Red Sea matters so much, how a handful of attacks managed to throw global trade into disarray, and what it means for the prices you pay and the future of globalization itself. To understand the chaos, you first need to understand the geography. The Red Sea isn't just any body of water, it's a 2,300-kilometer-long corridor that connects the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal in Egypt. Together, they form a vital shortcut between Asia and Europe. Roughly 15% of global trade, trillions of dollars worth of goods, passes through this narrow route every year. That includes everything from oil and natural gas to electronics, cars, clothing, and food. It's one of the main reasons global trade has been as fast and cheap as it is. Sailing through the Red Sea saves ships about 10 days compared to taking the long route around Africa. 10 days might not sound like much, but in logistics, time is money, and fuel, and wages, and insurance. But this artery, efficient, direct, and vital, has a weak point. At its southern end lies a narrow choke point called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, meaning the Gate of Tears. And recently, that name has started to feel eerily appropriate. In late 2023, as the war in Gaza intensified, the Houthi movement in Yemen, backed by Iran, began attacking ships in the Red Sea. They claimed they were targeting vessels linked to Israel or its allies, but in reality many of the ships they hit had nothing to do with the conflict at all. Using drones, missiles, and speedboats, the Houthis struck commercial cargo ships, oil tankers, and container vessels traveling through one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. For global trade, this was a nightmare scenario. Within weeks, dozens of attacks were reported. Insurance costs for ships in the region skyrocketed. Major carriers, like Maersk, MSC, and Hapag-Lloyd, suspended operations through the Red Sea, rerouting their fleets around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. And that's when a local security crisis became a global economic one. On a map, the reroute looks simple. Instead of passing through the Suez Canal, ships go south around the tip of Africa, but in practice, it's an enormous disruption. That alternative path adds 3,500 to 4,000 nautical miles, roughly 10 to 14 extra days of travel. Every extra day means more fuel, higher crew costs, and ships tied up longer before they can make another trip. Multiply that across thousands of vessels, and suddenly, the world's shipping capacity shrinks. Fewer available ships mean fewer containers moving, and fewer containers mean prices start climbing. The knock-on effects were immediate. Freight rates on Asia to Europe routes more than doubled within weeks. Insurance premiums soared. And, because energy products also pass through this corridor, even oil prices began to tick upward, feeding inflation worldwide. This wasn't just a shipping detour, it was a reconfiguration of global logistics. The new route around Africa isn't just longer, it's rougher, riskier, and costlier. Ships face strong currents and unpredictable weather. Ports on Africa's western and southern coasts, from Durban to Walvis Bay, saw sudden surges in traffic they weren't built to handle. Congestion increased, delays multiplied, and the entire system started to buckle under pressure. Now let's zoom out and follow that ripple to its final destination, your wallet. When shipping costs rise, the effects don't stay on the ocean. They climb up the supply chain. Manufacturers pay more to import parts, retailers pay more to restock products, and eventually those costs get passed to consumers. By mid-2024, the average cost to ship a standard container from Shanghai to Rotterdam had tripled compared to the previous year. For importers of everyday goods, clothes, electronics, toys, that was a massive hit. And since so many products are globally sourced, the effects weren't isolated to any one country. supermarket shelves in Europe began to see shortages of imported foods. Construction projects in the Middle East faced delays as building materials got stuck in transit. Auto plants in Germany had to scale back production because parts from Asia were late. It's like pulling one thread in a vast, invisible web and watching the whole thing shift. Even inflation statistics began to reflect it. Central banks in Europe and Asia started noting shipping-related inflationary pressures. Energy prices rose too, because crude and LNG cargoes had to travel further and pay higher premiums. And here's the kicker: these price increases weren't caused by consumer demand. They came purely from disruption. A local conflict in Yemen had quietly become a hidden tax on global trade. Crises like this always create winners and losers. On the losing side were the manufacturers relying on just-in-time supply chains, a system built on precision and predictability. Suddenly, that model crumbled. Delays meant empty warehouses, halted assembly lines, and shrinking profit margins. Smaller businesses that couldn't afford to reroute their goods or absorb higher costs were hit hardest. For them, a 50% jump in shipping prices could erase their entire profit margin. Consumers were losers too, of course. Higher freight costs meant higher retail prices and longer delivery times, even for basic goods. But some players benefited. Ports on Africa's western coast, previously quiet, found themselves bustling with rerouted ships. Logistics firms specializing in long-haul detours made record profits. Insurance companies saw a boom in war risk coverage demand. Even some energy exporters, particularly those outside the Red Sea route, gained from higher global oil prices. Yet underneath all of it lay a deeper lesson. Efficiency has made global trade fragile. For decades, supply chains were optimized for speed and cost. Everything was lean, timed, and globalized. But that same efficiency left almost no room for disruption. When one link in the chain breaks, whether by a virus, a war, or a missile strike, the whole system feels it. The Red Sea crisis became another reminder, just like the pandemic before it, that globalization's strength is also its weakness. There's another layer to this story that's easy to miss: the environmental cost. By forcing ships to take the longer Cape of Good Hope route, the crisis has dramatically increased global carbon emissions. A single trip around Africa burns up to 40% more fuel than the shorter Suez Passage. Multiply that across thousands of voyages, and the environmental footprint becomes staggering. Ironically, a conflict in one of the world's hottest and driest regions ended up worsening global climate targets. Strategically, the crisis has also redrawn the map of maritime power. Countries like the United States and the United Kingdom quickly launched naval patrols to protect trade under an operation known as Prosperity Guardian. But not every nation joined in. Some shipping companies still refused to risk the Red Sea, arguing that even military escorts couldn't guarantee safety. And so, the idea that the global commons, the open seas, are always free and secure has started to erode. For centuries, the oceans symbolized stability. Now, they're looking increasingly like extensions of geopolitical fault lines. So, what's next for the Red Sea and for global trade? There are a few possible futures. In the best case, attacks subside, diplomatic channels reopen, and ships slowly return to the Suez route. Freight costs fall, delivery times stabilize, and the global supply chain breathes again. In the middle case, which many experts think is likely, the Red Sea remains a gray zone. Some ships risk it with naval protection, others play it safe and reroute around Africa. The result is a semi-permanent rise in costs and delivery times, a new normal for global shipping. And, in the worst case, the conflict escalates, drawing in more regional actors or spreading to other choke points like the Strait of Hormuz. That could make the Red Sea crisis look like a small tremor compared to the economic earthquake that follows. Whatever happens, the world has already learned a hard lesson. The price of globalization is vulnerability. The more connected we become, the more exposed we are to the smallest disruptions. When you click buy now, it's easy to forget the thousands of miles, the ports, the hands, and the hazards your purchase travels through. But the Red Sea crisis has reminded the world that trade is not digital, it's physical. It depends on peace, cooperation, and open routes. A single waterway between Africa and Arabia can decide how much you pay for gas, how soon your phone ships, or whether your supermarket shelves stay stocked. And that's what makes this story more than a headline about missiles and ships. It's a glimpse into how fragile and how interconnected the modern world really is. The Red Sea may seem distant, but its ripples reach every home, every business, and every economy. Because when one trade artery tightens, the pulse of global commerce slows, and we all feel it. That's it on this edition of Nexus-Feed. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the unseen forces shaping our world, because behind every price tag, every shipment, and every political crisis, there's a story that connects us all. And let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Do you expect the Red Sea crisis to vanish soon, or will the situation get worsened over time? Until our next one, keep asking the right questions, stay critical and be safe.